AITA for exposing my saintly stepmother after 25 years of lies? My name is Angel. I am 37, I live in Western Pennsylvania, and I work as a billing coordinator for a small physical therapy group outside Pittsburgh. Most of my adult life has been quiet on purpose. I pay my bills early, keep emergency granola bars in my desk drawer, and still feel weirdly guilty when someone does something kind for me without wanting anything back. I didn't become organized because I am naturally calm. I became organized because losing one piece of paper as a kid could mean losing the only proof I had. The main person in this story is my stepmother, Marlene. She married my father, Robert, when I was 8, 3 years after my mom died. To everyone else in Millvale Ridge, Marlene was the woman who brought casseroles to sick neighbors, volunteered at church rummage sales, and said, "Bless her heart," like it was a prayer. She wore soft cardigans, remembered birthdays, and signed up first whenever the church bulletin asked for meal train volunteers. To me, she was the person who taught me that a clean kitchen mattered more than a crying child. My mother died when I was 5. I remember her in pieces. Peppermint lotion, library books stacked on the coffee table, pancakes on Sundays that were always a little too dark around the edges. She wasn't a perfect saint. She got tired. She forgot field trip forms. But when she hugged me, I never had to wonder who she was performing for. After she died, my dad didn't become cruel right away. He became hollow. He went to work, came home, sat in front of the TV and stared through it. Marlene moved into that hollow space like she had been waiting for it. At first, everyone called her a blessing. "That little girl is lucky to have you," a woman from church told her at a potluck. Marlene smiled and rested a hand on my shoulder. Her nails pressed just hard enough that I stopped fidgeting. "We are both learning," she said. "Some children need firmer love. Structure is kindness." People nodded like she had quoted scripture. The first private thing she took from me was one of my mother's sweaters. It was blue and stretched out at the cuffs, and I slept with it tucked under my pillow. One afternoon, I came home from school and found my bed stripped bare. Marlene was tying a trash bag in the hallway. "Where is Mom's sweater?" I asked. She didn't look guilty. That was the frightening part. She looked annoyed that I had interrupted her. "Clinging to dead people isn't healthy," she said. "Your father needs peace, not a little girl worshipping grief." I started crying, and she leaned down close enough that I could smell coffee on her breath. "Quietly," she said. "Your father has suffered enough." That became the rhythm of the house. Public Marlene was patient, loving, and long-suffering. Private Marlene was sharp enough to cause deep emotional harm without always raising a hand. She made rules that sounded reasonable until they became traps. I scrubbed baseboards with an old toothbrush. I refolded towels if the edges didn't line up. I cleaned the kitchen after dinner while my homework sat unopened at the table. If I tried to read before everything was done, she would say, "If you have time for stories, you have time to clean." At church, she hugged me tightly when people were watching. At home, she gripped my arm firmly and whispered, "Smile like you are grateful." When I flinched, people said I was rude. My maternal grandmother used to send cards. I know that now. Back then, Marlene told me, "She has her own life. You should stop begging people to want you." Years later, I found one unopened birthday card hidden behind old tax papers in a storage cabinet. It had $5 inside and a note that said, "Call me anytime, sweetheart. I miss you." I was 16 when I found it. I sat on the basement stairs and read that sentence until the words blurred. Marlene was careful with the outside world. She met with teachers before I could say anything. She told them I had adjustment issues. She told them I lied for attention. She told the school counselor, Mr. Brooks, that I twisted normal discipline into a serious situation because I resented her. "We are trying everything at home," she said once in his office, her hand tight on my shoulder. "But she has always struggled with honesty." Mr. Brooks looked at me over his glasses and said, "Angel, sometimes blended families require effort from everyone." I learned early that crying just gave Marlene more material. When I was 12, I started sneaking next door to Mrs. Evelyn Price's house. She lived in the narrow beige house beside ours, with wind chimes on the porch and a kitchen that smelled like tea and old wood. I told Marlene I was working on school projects. Sometimes I really was. Sometimes I just needed 30 minutes in a room where nobody was measuring how loudly I breathed. One afternoon, I used Mrs. Price's computer to email Mr. Brooks. I still remember the subject line because I typed it 3 times before I hit send. Please don't call my house. The email said, please don't tell my stepmom I wrote this. She will know it was me. I just need someone to know that I am not making this up. I am scared to go home sometimes. I deleted the browser history because I thought that was what smart people did. I didn't know Mrs. Price's printer had spit out a copy and left it in the tray. Nothing happened at school. Or at least nothing good happened. 2 nights later, Marlene accused me of stealing a pair of earrings I had never touched. She said thieves slept where they belonged and sent me to the basement storage room with a thin blanket. The room smelled like old paint, dryer sheets, and damp cardboard. There were Christmas decorations stacked against one wall and one small window near the ceiling. Maybe down there you will learn, she said, shutting the door. In the morning, my dad saw me come upstairs. My hair was flat on one side, and I was still holding the blanket around my shoulders. He looked at Marlene first. She had one of her episodes, Marlene said, pouring coffee. I handled it. My dad rubbed his forehead. Just try not to upset her, Angel. That sentence became the family motto. I left at 18 with 2 bags, a folder of journals, and a Greyhound ticket I paid for with money from a grocery store job. I didn't storm out. I slipped out. There is a difference. My dinner that night came from a motel vending machine, and my old diary was wrapped in a hoodie because I was more afraid of losing that than my clothes. For years I kept my distance. I built a life that looked boring and felt safe. I answered emails quickly. I saved receipts. I took screenshots of conversations that didn't need screenshots. When someone said, we need to talk, my stomach still dropped like I was back in that kitchen under the framed Bible verse that said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Then my cousin Linda called me at work. I was entering insurance denials into our billing system when my phone buzzed. Linda's name on the screen made me stare at it so long my coworker asked if I was okay. Your father is sick, Linda said when I answered. Her voice had that small-town family tone, gentle and accusing at the same time. It is serious. Whatever happened years ago, he is still your father. I picked up a sticky note and wrote Robert sick even though I had heard her. My hand needed something to do. Whatever happened years ago is why this is complicated, I said. She sighed. Angel, don't start with that. Nobody wants drama. I almost laughed. Nobody ever wants drama from the person hurting. They just want quiet. I went back to Millvale Ridge 2 weeks later. The old house was still 2 stories with beige siding, a narrow driveway, and a basement door visible from the kitchen if you stood at the right angle. The hallway mirror was the same. The smell was the same too. Lemon cleaner over old carpet, like Marlene had been scrubbing the air itself. She opened the door wearing a pale blue sweater and a cross necklace. Well, she said. Look who remembered where we live. My father was in a recliner in the living room, thinner than I expected, with medication bottles lined up on a TV tray beside him. He looked older than 68. He also looked relieved that I was there and terrified that I might say anything true. Marlene performed caretaking beautifully. She adjusted his blanket when relatives came by. She wrote medication times on a chart clipped to the fridge. Church ladies dropped off soup, and she accepted each container with wet eyes and humble thanks. When we were alone in the laundry room, with the washer banging hard enough to cover our voices, her face went flat. Your father cannot handle your version of history right now, she said. My version. Don't make this about yourself. You always did know how. I didn't answer. I had learned that arguing with Marlene was like throwing paper into a fan. Everything came back shredded. The dinner happened 3 nights later. Linda was there, along with 2 cousins, 1 uncle, and Mrs. Price from next door, who had brought a lemon pie and looked smaller than I remembered. Robert sat in his recliner nearby, coughing into a tissue. Marlene had made chicken casserole in her old white dish with the chipped handle. The counters were polished. Church bulletins were stuck to the fridge with apple-shaped magnets. My phone was face down beside my plate because by then, I had started recording whenever Marlene got me alone. She talked about exhaustion first, then sacrifice, then how hard it was to raise a child who rejected love. People stared at their plates. Marlene dabbed the corner of her eye with a napkin. If she had been easier to love, Maybe this family would have been happier. The room went quiet in that special way families go quiet when everyone hears something cruel and starts calculating the cost of admitting it. My hand tightened around my water glass. I didn't throw it. I didn't yell. I looked at her and said, "Say that again." Marlene's mouth pinched. "Don't start, Angel." "I am not starting anything," I said. "I am listening." Linda whispered, "Can we not do this right now?" I looked around the table. My cousins avoided my eyes. My uncle pushed peas around with his fork. My father stared at the TV even though it was muted. That hurt more than Marlene's sentence. Not because it was new, because it wasn't. I stood up, took my phone and said, "I used to think the worst thing you did was cause me pain. It wasn't. It was making everyone comfortable watching." Then I walked out before my voice could break. I sat in my car under the streetlight outside the house and replayed the recording. Marlene's voice came through clearly. So did the silence afterward. My hand shook so badly I saved the file twice and emailed it to myself from the driveway. That was the moment I stopped wanting an apology and started wanting a record. Back at my apartment, I pulled out the plastic bin I had dragged from place to place for nearly 20 years. Inside were journals, old report cards, one hidden birthday card from my grandmother, school papers, and scraps that probably looked meaningless to anyone else. To me, they were proof that I had been alive inside that house. I started a timeline. Dates, teachers' names, punishments, missing calls, the basement, the counselor's office, the night of the earrings, the days I wrote, "I think I am bad," beside normal teenage complaints about math homework and wanting better sneakers. I didn't write like a future witness. I wrote like a kid trying to stay real. Then I requested my school records. Millvale Rich School District still had older paper files boxed in archives, half digitized and badly labeled. When copies arrived, I sat at my kitchen table with a highlighter and a cup of coffee that went cold before I touched it. The words were worse than I expected because they sounded so official. Home stress. Adjustment concerns. Guardian reports student fabricates conflict at home. Guardian. Not mother. Guardian. Another note referenced a student email regarding home stress, dated the same year I used Mrs. Price's computer. But the actual email was missing. I found an attorney named Thomas Reed through a coworker's recommendation. His office was not dramatic or fancy. Fluorescent lights. A Keurig in the corner. File boxes on the floor. A receptionist who spoke in a hushed voice like every appointment was happening in a library. I brought my messy box of documents and apologized 3 times for the mess. Thomas opened the lid, saw the labeled folders and said, "This is not a mess. This is a start." I didn't cry. I almost did when he said, "I believe you. Now we have to build something a court can believe." "I am tired of having to prove I was a child," I said. His face changed a little. Not pity. Something sharper. "I know," he said. "But patterns matter. Records matter. Don't argue with her in writing. Let her talk. Your anger is valid. Evidence is stronger." Marlene, of course, kept talking. She posted vague things on Facebook. Prayers for families torn apart by bitterness. Some wounds are chosen. She didn't name me because she didn't have to. In the family group chat, Linda wrote, "Angel, your father is sick. This is not the time to drag up the past." I replied, "It already waited 25 years. One cousin wrote, "Marlene did the best she could." I wrote back, "No. She did what she could get away with." After that, I muted the chat and sent screenshots to Thomas. I also went to see my father alone. Marlene had gone to pick up prescriptions, and he was sitting in the recliner with a blanket over his knees. The house was quiet except for the wall clock clicking like it was counting down to something. "Did you know?" I asked. He closed his eyes. "Angel." "No. Did you know?" He swallowed. I knew Marlene could be hard. She had a hard job too. I was 8. I thought you too would adjust. You mean I would adjust to being hurt quietly? He looked at his hands. I didn't know how bad it was. "Did you ever ask?" "Privately. Once." He didn't answer. That was an answer. The missing email bothered me more than anything. Thomas said old school records were often incomplete, but the reference meant something had existed. "There was an email," I told him. Then we find out who saw it, he said. A week later, Mrs. Price called me. Her voice was thinner than I remembered but still steady. Angel, she said, I heard about what happened at the dinner. I wondered when you would come back. I almost didn't, I said. Would you come by? There are things I should have told someone years ago. Her porch still had wind chimes. The welcome mat was faded nearly blank. She moved slowly, but her eyes were clear. On her kitchen table sat a dented blue tin box and 3 folders held together with rubber bands. She touched the top folder like it might bite her. I kept it because throwing it away felt like lying, she said. Inside were handwritten logs, dates and times, yelling from Robert's house, banging near the basement, Angel outside on back porch, no coat, 9:40 p.m. light on in basement room past midnight. Child crying. Marlene told her to stop making herself pitiful. There were printed emails I had sent from her computer, including the one with the subject line, "Please don't call my house." There was a photograph taken from her kitchen window showing the small basement window lit from inside on a snowy night. There was an envelope with a note in my 12-year-old handwriting. "Please don't tell Marlene I came over. I just need someone to know." At the bottom of the box was an old mini cassette and a typed transcript of a voicemail Marlene had left her. Mrs. Price's hands trembled when she unfolded it. Marlene's message said, "Evelyn, you need to stop filling that girl's head with ideas. Angel has problems you don't understand, and if you encourage her stories, you will answer for the damage." I stared at the paper so long Mrs. Price finally said, "I was afraid of being wrong. I was more afraid of Marlene than I admitted. That is not an excuse. It is the truth. Why didn't you say anything?" My voice came out smaller than I wanted. Her eyes filled. "Because I was a coward then. I am trying not to be one now. You deserved an adult who did more than listen through a wall." I wanted to be angry at her. Part of me was. Another part of me was looking at a table full of proof and realizing, for the first time in my life, someone outside that house had known I wasn't making it up. Thomas went quiet when he reviewed Evelyn's folders. He scanned everything, requested certified copies where possible, and built a chronological binder so thick it barely closed. "This is no longer your word against hers," he said. "It never should have been," I said. The final recording came from the laundry room. Marlene cornered me after another family visit. I had started recording before I walked in because Thomas had told me, "Don't bait her. Don't threaten her. Just protect yourself." The washer was thumping. Robert was asleep in the living room. Marlene folded towels with intense precision. "You think you are clever. Digging through old papers. Turning people against a sick man." "I am not doing this here," I said. She stepped closer. "I gave you a home. You gave me problems." I kept my voice flat. "You should be careful what you say." Her smile was small and mean. "Or what? You will cry to another counselor? No one believed you then, Angel. No one will believe you now." I looked at her for a long second and said nothing. 2 days later, Thomas filed the complaint package with the proper county offices and forwarded evidence to investigators. There was a civil action too, separate from the criminal side. I will not pretend the legal process was quick or clean. It wasn't. It involved records requests, affidavits, interviews, certified copies, and a lot of sitting in hallways under bad lighting while people discussed my childhood in procedural language. Signing my name felt less like revenge and more like testifying to my younger self that she had not imagined it. The backlash came exactly as expected. Linda left a voicemail saying, "Could this not have waited? Your father is already suffering." I texted back, "So did I." Everyone found patience for that. Some relatives stopped calling. Some sent Bible verses. A few messaged me privately with things like, "I don't want to speak ill of anyone, but I did always wonder about the basement." Nobody wanted to be brave too early. Small towns are full of people who remember cars in driveways and children crying on porches, then call it minding their business. At the pretrial hearing, Marlene arrived in a pale gray dress with a tissue balled in one hand. She never used it. Her attorney framed me as a bitter adult daughter exploiting my father's illness to punish the woman who had raised me. Marlene said softly, "I loved that child like my own. She always hated me for trying." That was the first time I almost laughed in court. The actual hearing that mattered took place in the county courthouse, in a room with old wooden benches, portraits on the wall, and family members sitting stiffly like church had gone wrong. Marlene wore soft colors again. Linda sat 2 rows behind her, lips pressed tight. My father came in a wheelchair and didn't look at me at first. Thomas did not perform. He worked. Piece by piece he introduced the timeline. My journals. The school records. The missing email reference. The hidden birthday cards. The photo of the basement window. Text between Marlene and my father, including one where she wrote, "Angel needs to learn her place before she ruins this family." Marlene said she didn't remember. She said I had always exaggerated. She said discipline looked different back then. Thomas kept his voice even. "Mrs. Marlene, you testified that Angel was never denied contact with her maternal relatives. Can you explain why 7 birthday cards from her grandmother were found unopened in your storage cabinet?" "I don't remember those." "You wrote return if she acts grateful on one envelope. Is that your handwriting?" Her mouth tightened. "It looks like mine, but I can't speak to context." Context. That word did a lot of work for people like Marlene. Mr. Brooks, my former counselor, testified too. He was older, heavier, and defensive in the way people get when they have rehearsed innocence but not accountability. Thomas showed him the file note referencing my email. "Did you receive a student email asking the school not to call the home?" Thomas asked. "To the best of my recollection, there were many communications back then. Did you call the home after the email specifically asked you not to?" Mr. Brooks shifted in his chair. "That may have been standard procedure." "Standard for whom?" Mr. Brooks looked down. He wasn't evil. That almost made it worse. He was careless, biased by the polished adult in the room, and unwilling to admit that a frightened kid had handed him a flare and he had filed it under adjustment concerns. Then my father testified. "I expected to feel ready." "I wasn't." Thomas asked, "Did you ever ask your daughter privately if she felt safe at home?" My father's voice cracked. "No." "Why not?" He looked at Marlene, then at me, then at his hands. "I didn't want to make things worse." And there it was. The sentence that raised me. I didn't look away from him. Not because I was strong. Because I wanted him to see that I heard it. Mrs. Price testified last. She wore a navy cardigan and held her papers with both hands. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. She explained the logs, the emails, the photograph, the voicemail. She said she had heard me cry through her kitchen wall more than once. Marlene's attorney asked, "And you waited decades to come forward?" Mrs. Price nodded. "Yes. And I have regretted it every day." "So your memory may be influenced by guilt." "My memory is supported by what I wrote down when it happened," she said. "That is why I kept it." Thomas played the voicemail Marlene had left her. Marlene sat very still. Then he played the laundry room recording. My own voice sounded distant. Marlene's came through clearly, sharpened by the washer banging behind her. "No one believed you then, Angel. No one will believe you now." No one gasped theatrically. The courtroom simply went still. Even Linda stopped whispering. Marlene's mask did not fall all at once. It cracked in small, ugly pieces. When Thomas pressed her on the basement, she said, "She made life impossible in that house." "She was a child," Thomas said. Marlene's face changed. For 1 second she looked at him the way she used to look at me when nobody else was watching. "She knew exactly what she was doing," she said. "Some children need breaking before they destroy everyone around them." The silence after that was different from the dinner table silence. This one did not protect her. The judge's decision was not poetic. Courts usually aren't. But his words were clear. He said the case was not about one misunderstood punishment or an imperfect blended family. It was a prolonged pattern of control, concealment, isolation, and creating an unsafe environment carried out by an adult with custodial power over a child. Marlene faced serious legal consequences and received a lengthy sentence for custodial misconduct, creating an unsafe environment, and interfering with access to help. The civil side resulted in restitution. A no-contact order was issued. The school district faced scrutiny over its old reporting failures, and Mr. Brooks's testimony did not disappear quietly into retirement the way he probably hoped. Marlene's church friends stopped posting about Grace for a while. Some relatives stopped speaking to her. Others stopped speaking to me, which told me what they had valued most all along. After sentencing, my father tried to talk to me in the courthouse hallway. He looked smaller in the wheelchair, wrapped in a coat Linda had buttoned wrong at the top. "Angel," he said. "I am sorry." I stood a few feet away, close enough to hear him, far enough to remember I was allowed to leave. "I believe you are sorry now," I said. "I needed you to be sorry then." His face folded, but I did not step forward to comfort him. That used to be my job in that family, making adults feel better about what they had done or failed to do. I was finished with it. Outside, the air was cold enough to sting. Mrs. Price stood beside me on the courthouse steps, both hands around the strap of her purse. "I should have done more," she said. "So should a lot of people," I said. Then after a moment, "But you are here now." She nodded, crying quietly, and I let that be enough. Not forgiveness. Not absolution. Just the truth standing there in daylight. I didn't walk out happy. Happy is not the word for losing a childhood and proving it happened. But I walked out lighter. In my car, I put the court folder on the passenger seat. Inside it was a copy of my childhood note from Mrs. Price's tin box. The one that said, "Please don't tell Marlene I came over. I just need someone to know." I had labeled the folder "Believed." I still work my ordinary job. I still save receipts. I still apologize too quickly sometimes. I don't visit Marlene. I don't let relatives turn my boundaries into family debates. I haven't forgiven my father just because people think illness should make forgiveness automatic. Justice did not give me my childhood back. It did something smaller and cleaner. It stopped the lie from outliving the truth. For 25 years, Marlene told me nobody would believe me. Turns out she was wrong. It just took one person brave enough to keep the receipts. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.